Hi, this is Sharena, and I am taking a media aesthetics and film course down at Fullerton College, and I have David Mann here on the phone with me. Hello, David.
Hi, Sharena.
Hi. So David has agreed to do a short little interview with me. This month we are focusing in class on sound design, and we were shown some movies and some different sound effects that were created by Foley artistry. And this is the first time I have even heard of this term, a Foley artist or this type of artistry in sound design, and it really piqued my interest. And so I'm just interested in finding out more about that. And David has agreed to answer a few questions. So I found you on the internet, and I was looking at your IMDb, and you have quite a lot of credits going back to 1992. And
yeah, that's right. I started with sound earlier than that. I've been, it was kind of my hobby to build loudspeakers and all sorts of electronic stuff, the electronic stuff. And then at the same time, I was, playing piano and interested in music, listening to a lot of music. So, when I was about 21 or 22, I decided to start getting into this thing, and I started as a roadie, running around the country, putting speaker systems for live shows. And after a while,
what kind of live shows? I'm just curious because I'm into music.
Rock shows. This was when I was still living in Israel, so it was, the main artists of Israel. It's a small country, so if you working in that field, it's almost always artists that you know from the radio and stuff like this. Unlike here, that there's so many artists that you never heard of. Over there, the ones that you put the serious systems for, for live shows are almost always famous.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of different things. It was mostly rock concerts, but also like theater, having those small mics that you hide somewhere on, like musicals and stuff like this. So it was all sorts of different things. It was very interesting and fun. It was a lot of fun, that year. But I didn't see myself staying in that field just because I didn't see how, it's going to be, I could have like a normal lifestyle, family and all that, running around and coming back every day at 2:00 in the morning from a show somewhere and just, sleeping until 2 the next day, to go to the next one.
Right.
And also it's a kind of a wild scene. People that are doing that there are kind of, there's a lot of smoking going on and all sorts of things like that. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. And after that, I just traveled for a little while. I did that actually to save enough money to travel, and I traveled in South America. When I came back, I decided to continue with my electronic studies. But in the evening, I started taking classes in a recording school, and I thought, I'm just gonna, because my main interest in that time was music. I didn't thought about sound effects for films and things like that. But part of the course was creating a sound effects track for whatever movie we wanted to. And we had to replace the voices and everything. Basically, we just had a video and we had to build everything. And I was enjoying it quite a lot.
Oh, that sounds fun.
after that, I started looking for work, and the guy that was running the school was fantastic because he had a lot of connections, and he kept on sending me to different studios. And the first one was a music studio, and the second one was a bit different. It was CD mastering. I don't know if you ever heard of mastering. It's kind of a small niche in this whole business, but it's interesting.
Yes.
You're basically getting the final product from the place where they mix the music after they record, they mix, they have a final product, and you just go and improve it a little bit more. Sometimes you can improve it a lot more and make it more suitable for radio and that type of things, where you need to kind of have some sort of balance between the low end sounds and the high end sounds that will be somewhere, in some kind of a worldly standard. Because when you mix, you have great speakers and you can play the bass very loud and everybody's very happy. But when, you need to kind of later on tame it to be more in a way that it will play on every type of loudspeakers in a reasonable way. So anyway, and I got to that studio, and at some point, they got some at that point, was kind of a revolutionary, system that you can edit multiple tracks on the computer. Because at that point, most recording studios were recording into tape. But at that place, you could have just, dragged things on your screen and put them, in the right time. So, and we started working over
digitally.
there. Yeah,
you
it was
started
digital.
Working more digitally. Yeah.
Yes. And at that point, later on, that studio was kind of changing hands and was not really clear what's happening. So I asked my school teacher, the sound school teacher, if there's anything else in that area, and he sent me to a TV station. And over there was mainly recording and making those promos. A TV station will put, tonight in Channel 9, you have this movie, and there's pieces of the movie, somebody edit a couple of things from the movie. And but a lot of times, a lot of things are getting chopped when you cut, 10 different things for a movie, because you don't, play one scene, you play different scenes. For the explosion, if there's an explosion, it will be cut, and so you need to rebuild those type of things and record the narrator and all that stuff. And that was a lot of fun, but it was kind of limited. It wasn't, what I knew, how they work over here in the United States or in big countries that making big movies, like Mission Impossible and stuff like this.
Was that your goal at that time to come to the United States?
My goal was at that point I already knew that, music was fun, and I'll keep it as a hobby, which I still do. But I wanted to go into the post-production sound, and mainly sound effects, because dialogue was not super interesting for me. It's although I'm enjoying it because I do it sometimes, but it's not as a full-time job. Just dialogue is when you're getting whatever was recorded on the set and you start cleaning things out if something was falling off stage, or there's you have to smooth things out. And because the way movies are shot, you can have a conversation that part of it was recorded half an hour before the other part. So you're jumping from two different times, and maybe one time had an airplane going by, and every time, they cut to the other guy talking, the airplane is gone. So you need to deal with those type of things.
But it wasn't really creative. It wasn't really kind of
more? It's interesting because it is creative, but it's also, and that's kind of an ego thing. Nobody knows what you're doing when you're cutting dialogue. Nobody knows what trouble, and disasters in the track you manage to save and make sound smooth. It's kind of, I went to my mixer once, and I asked him, so what do you think about my dialogue editing? Because I was kind of new to it. It was a few years ago. And he said, I don't know, it's the only thing he could tell is when somebody's doing it wrong, that it was done wrong. But when you're doing it right, he doesn't know if it was just recorded. It was fantastically recorded on the set, and there was no problems, or if I fix something and you can't hear what I fixed because it's done well.
And that's the goal.
That's the goal, yeah, but for me it was kind of, okay, no, I need some more feedback about my work. I don't want to, work like crazy and nobody noticed what I did, it's kind of, so, and sound effects is a very different story because they hear everything you did. And the mixer can tell you, oh, this was awesome or this was, and in any case, it's also much more creative because you start combining things and going and recording things and putting things together.
I'm interested in finding out what was the opportunity that actually led you to come to the United States finally.
So after working in Israel in, the small TV station, doing the stuff, which was kind of good that I did, we had I got married and my wife was born in the United States. So coming here was not an issue. I got a green card pretty quickly. And we decided, okay, she was born here, I can get a green card. Let's see how, for me it was, let's see how this whole business is working in the big world, in the real world. How do they, doing sound effects for a movie like Jurassic Park and, huge things like that? Because really in Israel it was somewhat amateurish, and I wasn't even working in a post-production sound. It was more like a TV station. So we came, the goal was to come for a year and, I'll try to work and see how things are and learn from it. But it was pretty clear pretty quickly for both of us that a year is not going to be enough. So we decided to make it 3 years. And after 3 years, my wife had a business. I was happy. I didn't really want to go back to Israel and go back to, the small kind of not super professional kind of way of doing things. Mainly over there, it's because usually it's one person that do all the jobs, and over here it's somebody that is specializing in recording Foley, somebody who's specializing in being the Foley artist, somebody specializing in dialogue, somebody specializing in sound effects, somebody specializing in mixing, and you're getting a
so you
much
have more
higher
an opportunity to collaborate, right, and learn from each other and. More opportunities.
Yeah, over here, because over there's two things. Over here, you're collaborating and you're getting feedback, from professional people that are, after you in the chain of things. And over there, basically, you do everything by yourself, and the only one that can give you feedback is the client, and they not necessarily know everything or telling you good, things that. Will help you learn. Yeah. So, and also over there, because you're doing everything, you don't get to be a very good professional in any of them because, if you cut sound effects a day a week, you can't really get into the zone and it's a very creative process. It's like if you were a musician and you only worked 4 hours a week, you wouldn't be able to achieve, something like Coldplay or Madonna or anything like that. There's just no way you can't get deep enough and try enough things to see what works for you and
Right.
what not and stuff like this. So anyway, we got to the United States, and I started a very small studio with some connection, and over there I met somebody that was working in a better studio that was doing interesting stuff, and I kind of he gave me the name of his owner of that studio, and I went there and I interviewed and I started working, and it was a bit of a shock for me in the beginning because they were expecting
Why?
a lot of things, and I said to my wife so many times, this is impossible. They want me to cut so many things in so little time. But it was more a matter of experience than anything else. The more you do things, the faster you do it, and the more efficient, and it's sounding better. And today, if I had to do what I did then, in 2 weeks, I would probably do in 2 days.
Right.
But it was a good experience. And at some point in that studio, I was cutting Foley, and you were interested in Foley. We'll talk about it a little bit soon. I was cutting Foley, and at some point I really, I knew that, that's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I really wanted to jump into sound effects, and I spoke with my boss. He said, yeah, show me something. Take a couple of days and show me something. And I got a video. Somebody recommended me something with a lot of action, and I started cutting it and organizing it, and I showed it to him, and he said, fine, that's great, start cutting. And what was, I don't know, you're probably young, but I don't know if you're familiar with Xena the Warrior Princess. It was also
yes,
Hercules. Those shows were just packed with so many sound effects. It was always, sword fights and horses and all sorts of gods appearing and disappearing and all sorts of magic. It was a great school. I'm not saying it was a great show, although it is kind of a cultish thing, and so a lot of people like it a lot. But
is that one of the first ones that you actually worked on?
Yeah, that was the first
shows.
sound effects show. Was Xena the Warrior Princess, episode 1.
Oh, that's a pretty good first show.
This is an incredible show, yeah. But I wouldn't say that this is my first thing I ever did, because I did work in Israel, in a TV station, and later on I did a little bit. There were actually 2 small studios on the way there, so it wasn't my first thing, and but it was very difficult, and slowly it became easier and easier, and in the end, I was doing it probably half the time that they gave me in the beginning, and without, sweating too much. So that was, okay, let me have you ask me questions, because I can continue with my history, but I'm not sure, what more interesting for you.
Well, what's interesting is, of course, when you say something like American War Princess, what was it? It sounds familiar. On your IMDb, I see that you did work on Austin Powers, Switchback, American History X. What got you into working on those big name films? What studio were you working under then? Or were you working independently, or?
No, that was actually the studio I was talking about with Xena the Warrior Princess, and actually most of those movies I was cutting Foley on, so that was kind of my beginning over there.
Okay.
And that was a good training to get into sound effects. Now Foley, I know you're kind of interested in hearing about Foley. It's basically, I'm just going to say what it is shortly, in a short couple of sentences. Basically, is part of the sound effects. It's the part that you record specifically for the show. It's not something that you have in the library and you bring it in, like an explosion or car crash or gunshots that you can't really record in the studio. It's what you can record in the studio, and that includes all the footsteps. People are walking constantly in movies and shows. And they play it very low in the mix unless it's like a close up of the legs or a lady walking in a stone kind of hallway or something, and then you're going to hear it loud. But it's a texture that if you don't put it there, it's somewhat odd. It's missing. It's constant. It's taking away from the illusion, and you can't really record it on the set very well. So you have the footsteps, and then you have the props, which is people putting something, a cup on the table, or pouring water into cup, or eating, with silverware, or even just moving. When somebody moves, we're doing cloth drag. We're just holding a bunch of cloth in our hands, and we kind of rub it when people are walking, so it's kind of imitate the friction, between your legs when your pants are, when you're walking and stuff like this.
Right. And it's also creating sounds that maybe you've never heard of before. You have to kind of invent them, like what they would sound like if it had a sound.
True. Although, in Foley, you rarely will be asked to create something that is not kind of an organic, something that you didn't ever heard before. It happens,
right,
but
that's more.
Mostly they doing things that are, it's not a design kind of an art, like sound design.
Right.
If an alien appear and with his spaceship and, there's all sorts of glowing lights and stuff like this, you wouldn't try to create that in Foley. You will try to do it from library, synthesizers, samplers, all sorts of effects. Machines and stuff like that.
Now, did you ever get into sound design? I see a lot of sound effects editor, sound effects.
We call it sound effect editing.
Okay.
People outside of the business calling it sound design. Now there's small differences. The sound designer is usually, the top guy that's dealing with creating the atmosphere of the sound in the movie and the big effects, the explosions, the surreal stuff and stuff like this. But since most of my projects, because I'm working mainly on TV shows, I'm the only sound effect editor, so you can call me sound designer, or sound effect editor. It's the same thing, the sound designer is more in a big team. There will be one guy that we consider the sound designer because he's going to tell, the people below him, how to use those type of birds or find me different winds, because it's stormy kind of night, and stuff like that.
Right.
But basically a sound effect editor is a sound designer. And people are very confused in our business. As soon as it's coming, it's not people that work directly with sound. People think that the sound designer is kind of creating everything, including the mix in the end. It's a bit of a trouble for us when people are looking for a sound designer. I don't know exactly what they're looking for, if they know what it is, or they just think, I'll find a sound designer. He'll take care of everything. So I've been doing a lot of sound. It started actually at Xena because basically it's like Xena was a show about this warrior princess in the times of the Greek gods, and the gods kept on appearing and disappearing, and every time they do that, there was like a visual effect, all sorts of sparks and thunderbolts and all sorts of crazy stuff, and we had to design that, to find, and in that show, actually, they insisted that we don't use anything synthesized. Everything needs to be coming from organic recorded sound, and so that was kind of a bit challenging, but I think they went the right way, because the synthesizers from that era were were very distinct kind of 80s kind of, pop songs kind of stuff. They didn't sound really great. I mean, and some people managed to make them sound really great, in some places, but not in the sound design area. It was more like music. And so anyway.
Well, it sounds like you learned a lot from working on that particular show. Is there a favorite show that you worked on, or a show that maybe was even more challenging that you learned even more from in your career?
Every show you actually learn something else. Because after Xena, I was a bit of in trouble because, all I knew to cut, really effectively, quite quickly, and it was basically horses and swords and fights and people falling and stabs but I didn't know how to cut, or I didn't have a lot of experience in cutting, cars and stuff more like today's stuff, normal doors that don't sound like dungeon doors and stuff like this. So it was kind of a bit of kind of another time that you feel like you're kind of working too slow and you don't get the right sounds and it takes you longer and you're not very comfortable with what you're doing. But that was somewhat short. It took me probably a couple of weeks maybe to make this transition and feel comfortable in the real world. Our world kind of stuff.
Right.
It was mainly the backgrounds are very different in today's world than then. In Xena it was mainly horses, and if they were next to a river, it was river, and if they're in a market, it was a market. But today it's very involved creating the background for a TV show or a movie, because it's
so I see that one of your more recent projects that you're working on is the Amazon series called The Patriot.
Yes.
How's that going for you?
That was a great experience. We kind of collaborated on that, about 5 or 6 different editors. I cut fully 2 episodes and was involved in another 2 of them. It was an interesting show. You've seen it?
I have not. But in reading about it, it looks very interesting.
It is, and it was interesting. That show was a bit difficult. I mean, it wasn't difficult, but it was a lot of work to try to create the background, mainly because it was happening in the Netherlands and in Luxembourg and somewhere in the middle of the United States where it's very industrial. You have lots of trains and things like that. So that was the uniqueness of that show. Creating the backgrounds for places like Luxembourg is somewhat difficult because our libraries are mainly, the walla track, what we call, or crowd track. When you're walking in the street and you have people, on the sideways talking and stuff. Over there, it cannot be English, or at least not distinctive English. So you have to find stuff in Luxembourg. I went to Wikipedia. A lot of times I'm doing a little research when I'm working on a show. Like if the show happens in New England, I will look and see what type of birds are in New England and try to stay with those type of, look in the library to see what of all the birds that are common to New England I can find in my library and use those type of birds. So Luxembourg, I went to Wikipedia. I saw that they're talking German. They're mainly talking French over there, but they can also talk German and the Dutch too. So I looked in the library, and it's a process of finding things that are working well, and what you cannot do. They bring actors, trying to find actors that talk that language and bring them to the studio. And they're, if it's a bar, you'll record a couple of people that can talk this language, and add that, to the background of what's happening.
Right.
There was a lot of boats going on there.
Do you have a centralized library that you go to when you work for a studio? Do they all have their own separate libraries, or is there something in the cloud that editors link up to?
So here's how it goes. So every studio that is at any size basically needs to have a library, otherwise it does not work. Now, I'm working for Universal Studios now, and they have a huge library. However, it's an advantage and disadvantage, because their library, if you look for a door, for example, wood door close, you'll get 2,000, wood door closes, and maybe only 100 in them will be actually usable, because there's a lot of stuff that was recorded long time ago, or recorded incorrectly, or recorded for a very specific purpose, and it might not be the purpose that you need it for. I usually look for doors that don't sound with too much echo from the room. Mainly the echo is an issue, because
now do you have to listen to each door sound before you find the right one, or
no,
do they add
I will spend my whole 2 days that I'm getting on, let's say, Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Superstore or Will and Grace, just listening to doors. So this is where your own library is coming to be handy. I looked for doors my entire career, and I kept them, and I usually name them in a way that I can find them later on. I put the word nice on it or something, and my initials and nice, or something like that. So I can look for them pretty quickly.
I would imagine you would have to build quite the vocabulary as well to be able to describe things in a way that you can distinct this sound from another sound. Just your English vocabulary must be pretty
in the beginning
wide.
there wasn't an internet, and I wasn't very proficient in English. I had a lot of vocabulary that I just didn't know some of the words. Although I grew up watching TV shows, and a lot of times without subtitles, because in Israel there wasn't that many TV shows that were interesting, so I was watching things on their Jordanian channel or their Lebanese channel, and they definitely didn't have Hebrew subtitles. So I learned English that way, but of course I was missing a lot. And I called my mom and I said, "Hey, buy me an English Hebrew dictionary and send it ASAP." So that was helpful. And later on, now it's all on the internet. I just go to dictionary. I go to Thesaurus.
You can even ask Alexa.
The software that we have in Universal for the library has. I usually don't turn it on, but you can turn on Thesaurus there. I hope I'm saying that word right. And what happens is that if you're looking for, let's say, a warm summer night, it will look for. That's not a good example. It will look for things that will say hot or all sorts of different words, and will find things that you wouldn't find if you just use the word warm. So that's very helpful when I don't use it a lot, because then you're getting tremendous amount of stuff, and usually I quickly find, in my search, what I need, but sometimes you don't, and then you use the thesaurus to um, to find more stuff at the same area
Right.
of.
Absolutely. I totally
So
get that.
yeah. And I basically, I think I have every TV show that I ever worked on. I keep the final sessions with me. So I have the sound from shows that I
Oh,
worked long
good.
time ago, and a lot of times the way I find sound that I need is opening the session from, let's say I worked on Cougar Town, or and I remember that over there was somebody going down with a rope from the ceiling to and I need
Mhm.
that type of a rope. So a lot of times, if I can't find it in the library really quickly, I'll open I'll open that
The history
session
from
and
you.
find it.
Right.
Now I'm keeping also, at least in Universal, since I started at Universal, I keep over there because drives is not an issue anymore. I keep all the videos, so it's much easier, faster to actually find, things. I remember the show kind of, because a lot of, season, like every season now that I've worked on, let's say Brooklyn Nine-Nine,
Mhm.
there's like 20 something episodes, but when you go fast forward on each episode, you very quickly realize what episode it was, and you remember, okay, this is when this character crashed from he was, crawling in the air vent, and it all crashed down. There was a lot of debris and stuff, and I need those type
Mhm.
of debris, so I find the episode, find that thing, and grab it. So there's
Now,
quite a lot of research.
when you're walking around just day by day, and you're going to the store with your wife, are you
Mhm.
hyper aware of sounds, and do you actually pull out your recorder? I'm just curious, because I would think that
Yeah.
would drive me crazy. I think I would be constantly looking for sounds if that were what I did for a living.
Yeah, but I know the limitation too. So I know that, okay, I come to the supermarket and there's this automatic door opening and closing.
Yes.
And if I'll try to record it, I immediately heard all the things that I wouldn't want in my recording. Like inside there will be music, outside there's going to be, traffic noise. And I need a clean
True.
door without any of that. I do keep a recorder with me most of the time. I have it in my bag
Mhm.
when I go to Universal, and I have a small thing that I can connect to my phone that is a very good high quality microphone that I carry with me anywhere else I go. A lot of times I
Right.
don't do anything with it, but then I'm beating myself if something good happens and I don't have the
Right.
microphone with me. So
So.
yeah, definitely. And I learned with my years that eventually the sounds that I record myself, 50%, maybe even more, let's say 80% of them will be garbage, but the other 20 will be just pure gold that nobody else has,
Mhm.
and I use them over and over again. It's just, it's
Nice.
fantastic. And at some point, I also decided, and then at that point I recorded a lot. I decided that, hey, there's the internet and people are looking for unique sound effects. Let's build a website that people can buy my sound effects. And I didn't have a lot of time, so I built a website and it had like 800 different sounds. And those, a lot
Mhm.
of them I went and recorded specifically. I went to the desert and I recorded, all sorts of things, wishes
Is
and
the website
cars.
still live? Is it still
Not the
alive on your website?
library. I still have it as a business card, but the library was just to keep a website to sell stuff on. It's probably somewhere between $60 to $100 just to have all the components that you need to sell things. And I didn't sell in that much, so eventually I realized, okay, I'm just losing every month money.
Mm.
And the reason I didn't sell that much, I think, is the world of online selling, retail is the competition is tremendous, and it's hard for people to find you unless you spend most of your time dealing with the marketing and promotions and all sorts of things like that. And I didn't enjoy that aspect. In fact, I really enjoyed building the site and recorded things and getting everything ready, but then it was there. It wasn't selling. It was like $10 a month, that was selling in the beginning. Not a lot
totally
more
relate
later
to
on.
that.
And then I started, spending my time on marketing and search engine optimization and all sorts of things that I really don't like.
Right.
I mean, it's not that I don't like it. I think it's a waste of time. And the other thing is that I had in this library so many things that I was, as I mentioned before, it's like my secret weapons, things that I don't want the whole world to have at this point. When I retire, I might, go back to this type of a thing. I wouldn't care at that point, but at this point, I do care, not to spread my good stuff all over. So,
yes,
it is somewhat, you do need to, to be somebody that, your mixers or your supervisor or the clients will be happy to work with, because you bring something, very unique and good. And I put a lot of effort into staying current and learn all the new tools and record new sounds and be unique and be good and because a lot of the world of sound effects, the world of post-production, strangely enough, the people that ending up doing what I'm doing, and I started directly from the passion for that. But most of the people around me are basically musicians that knew the tools and, for them to jump in, they couldn't make money in music or, it's not everybody can make money, being a musician.
Mm-hmm.
But they already knew the tool of the trade because it's the same software that's used for music. And they just jumped in. And some of them did develop passion for it and some of them didn't. And, and if you don't have the passion or you don't work really hard to improve yourself all the time, there's, for every sound effect editor, there's 10 people outside that wants to do that. So it's not, you can't survive in that business if you don't give it 100%.
A lot of competition.
Yeah.
So what kind of projects are you working on currently?
Currently, I'm working, since I moved to Universal, I used to work in Sony Pictures and, doing a few HBO big shows over there, which was fantastic. It was tremendously great. But later on, the studios are going up and down, and how many people they need. And eventually, Sony was not a good place to. It was a lot of, it became, a lot of people. They basically let go of most of their people, and the people that stayed were more friends of the boss and stuff like this. So I had to move, and I moved to Universal. And Universal, when I started on half an hour, comedy shows. And currently I'm working on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is a very high-profile kind of a funny show.
Yeah, I've heard of
Superstore, which is great. I really like it. It's like a Walmart or Costco or something in St. Louis, and with a lot of Bill Haley's that works there.
Why do you like that one in particular?
Just the writing, the acting and the writing. Is something you don't expect it, that you don't expect smart, jokes in a show like that. So when it happens, it's kind of, no, they're really writing very well, scripts for this show. That one, it was a bit challenging, because basically when you go to the library, there's a few, big stores, in the library, but they don't sound that much at all like, a Target or Costco or. So I was kind of bummed because a lot of those big stores that you go to, they have music, and as soon as a place has music, I cannot record anything. There's no point. Nobody will let me play it on the show because of copyright and
right.
so. But then I discovered that Target, at least the Target next to me, they don't play music in their PA. So I went there with my array of microphones, and I put it on the shopping cart, and I covered it with like a cloth or something, so nobody will kind of start asking me questions every 2 seconds. Because that's what happens when people steal with microphones. And I walked around and I recorded in different areas of the store, like the pharmacy area and the cashier area and the general, sports and electronics. Electronics was a little bit of a problem because they do play some, music or TVs over there. And that's how I cut the show. I basically every time that they change location in the store, because sometimes they're shooting next to the cashier, so we have a lot of beep beep, for the scanners and people talking or cash registers open and closing and then, if they're next to the sport, I have something else. So every time they cut, it's hard to hear it per se, when you watch a TV show, unless you're going to play it a bit loud and pay attention. But everybody on the stage, my mixers, my the client, sometimes will demand it, and sometimes will just be so excited when I do that. When I change the background almost complete as much as I can when they change location in the store. Suddenly it's different voices. Here it's going to be mom with 2 kids, and here it's going to be a bunch of guys. But there's a sense of change in location, which is very important for the director and very hard in shows like this because I had to record a lot of stuff to have enough differences, between different. So that Superstore, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, is a cop show in Brooklyn, and it's funny and it's very packed with action. There's always some kind of a car chase or motorcycles or helicopters or different cities. Last episode that we were working on, they basically flew to Los Angeles for a funeral for their old captain, and then they drove the whole way back through, the entire United States. So it's different, desert night, desert day, and then they're in different areas. I don't remember exactly. It was like farms with cows. And, it was a lot of funny stuff and a lot of, like the cows. It was a farm that was, center for insemination. So it's nice. You don't see anything, but the producer wanted to hear all those cows having sex. So that was kind of a challenge. And we found great stuff for that.
That's
you can
funny.
check that episode. It's probably going to be on TV the next, if it's not, if it wasn't already, it's going to be, this week or next week or something like this.
Oh, cool. What's the name of the episode? I'll have to look it up.
Let me check. Oh, never mind. You can, if you, in Hulu, they will say, Captain, funeral, and then the guy needs to drive the whole United States to get back to Brooklyn in time or something. So, and then I'm cutting. I'm cutting Will and Grace, which is a show that was very high profile in the end of the 80s and into the 90s. I'm not sure exactly the years, but it was somewhere I think in the 90s. About 2 gay guys and 1 lady, and the lady is a partner in an apartment with one of the guys. It's also very high profile. People really love that show. And that one is recorded in front of a live audience, which is somewhat different than my other shows that are completely scripted and all that. I mean, that one show is also scripted, but you have the crowd to deal with because the crowds are laughing, but a lot of times they're cutting the show much shorter than when they shoot it because they don't want to hear the crowd laughing until they you know,
are ready.
they coming down and then, you know, say the next line, but then you have a lot of long breaks and they cut it differently, so I need to smooth the crowd, you know, coming in and out and all that stuff. And yeah, I've been working on the last year and the year before on Veep, which is also a very high profile show. It's an HBO about a vice president that become president for a short while and then running against, you know, again to try to get the presidency again with the U.S. rifles. That's a difficult show because HBO are so picky about their stuff and also it's very busy because they're in 100 different locations every episode, so so it's challenging. Lots of crowds and you know, that was probably the bigger one that I'm dealing with right now. I'm not cutting it right now. Actually, the main actress has breast cancer, and hopefully she'll be back to work, and hopefully she'll be fine. You know. And then also back to work so we can have another season.
Okay. Well, seems like you've got a lot going on with the studios. Is there any way that an independent filmmaker could hire you for services?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, mainly I'm available for that in the summer because I'm working with Universal, and in any case, the whole TV world is working that way in some amount or another. Summer is more open, you know, summer is less shows happening in the summer. It's more like reruns or whatever they do now. I don't know.
Well, if there's anyone